The Cincinnati Bengals have made the AFC Championship game 2 of the past 4 years, but the other 2 of the 4 years have been pillaged by injury and inconsistency throughout the roster in Cincinnati. In 2025, what version are we going to see? We know last year they needed to revamp that defense. That's why they went out and drafted first-rounder Ja'Marr Stewart to be that developmental prospect that will have an impact. Week 1, they're at the Cleveland Browns. Now, Cleveland, when you think of that team, you're like, wow, quarterback has been really rough there. Who will the quarterback be? They drafted Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. They went out and brought in Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco. Who will the starter be? We know who the starter is in Cincinnati. It is an elite processor, former Heisman Trophy winner, national champion with the same wide receiver. He's still throwing to Ja'Marr Chase. That's a Bengals win to start the year 1-0. 2, it's another easy matchup. I think that's a great start to the season for the Bengals, the Browns, and the Jaguars to really get momentum going forward as far as the tougher starts the past couple of years. There's an expectation to beat Cleveland and beat the Jaguars and right off the bat get off to 2-0. Anything but 2-0 would be not taken by Cleveland Browns fans or anyone probably, Cincinnati Bengals fans, anyone in that organization. They beat the Jaguars 35-20. How about it? Travis Hunter covering Ja'Marr Chase or Tee Higgins. He can't cover both of them. Joe Burrow is going to have to probably throw to the other side because imagine even Travis with his ball skills early on, the impact he'll have on offense on the opposite of Brian Thomas will be fun to watch. But the Jaguars are going to just be a fun watch next year. Have the Bengals winning that 25-20. In week 3, a toughie at the Minnesota Vikings. I'm actually a bit down on Minnesota comparatively to where they've been the last couple of years, a playoff team. 14-3 last year with that Sam Darnold-led core with Kevin O'Connell just dialing up absolute gems. J.J. McCarthy, first year as the starter. They're not going to ease him into it. They're throwing him into the fire. I see Minnesota, though, coming out with a 24-23 win, but have low expectations for what Minnesota will be, especially that first year, as mentioned, with J.J. throwing to Justin Jefferson and, of course, Jordan Addison. Addison, the former receiver for the Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, of course. Justin Jefferson, the former receiver for Heisman Trophy winner in Joe Burrow across the field. So Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase, we get to see that great matchup from a couple of years ago. That was like the game that brought Ja'Marr Chase on the scene. Remember Minnesota, he had like a 70-yard touchdown early in that year where the Bengals went on to the Super Bowl. The 2-1 Bengals hit the road Monday Night Football against the Broncos. Bo Nix versus Joe Burrow. We get to see Ja'Marr Barron and Pat Surtain. This just might be the most exciting secondary versus wide receiver duo in the NFL next year. We get to see it week 4 under the bright lights. Troy Aikman is going to be all over it. You can certainly understand that right now. Ja'Marr Barron most likely will be the guy trailing and covering Ja'Marr Chase down the field. And Pat Surtain will most likely be covering Tee Higgins. It just seems to me that might be the matchup, but they could obviously rotate, and we'll see those matchups multiple times throughout the game. Have the Broncos pulling out that win, 27-23, not for a lack of explosive plays on both sides. Just like this being in Denver, it's underrated how tough it is to get into that environment and just play a full 4 quarters. 2-2 with the home game against the Detroit Lions, and then at the Packers would be like, shoot, we were 2-0, and now it's 2-2, back to square one, but a win. 36-33, one of the more underrated games. A lot of people, of course, you got Ohio playing against Michigan. We know all about that in college football, but for the NFL, with the Detroit Lions playing the Cincinnati Bengals, it's a shootout. Don't see either of these teams being able to hold up in the back end and coverage. Of course, Detroit with Kirby Joseph, one of the better young safeties in the NFL, along with Brian Branch back there, the former Alabama star defensive back that comes down. He's like a corner, a safety, a linebacker. He can be versatile in all of it, and just one of the more matchups we're looking forward to. Aiden Hutchinson versus Trey Hendrickson would be a lot of fun as far as like the edge guys who has a bigger impact on the game. But as of right now, like I said, I'm in Africa at the time you're watching this video. Is Trey Hendrickson even on the Bengals to play during the year? The next week, a 3-2 Bengals head into Lambeau Field. Ja'Marr Chase and Tee Higgins get to grace the confines of Lambeau and all the history of that team and that stadium. Matt LaFleur wants to run the football, and he's going to be able to do that against Cincinnati. The question is without Jair Alexander, who they willingly were like, release, we don't need you anymore. Now he's a Baltimore Raven. Baltimore's like, thank you very much. We only have to pay him a couple mil and pair him with our very good defense. The Packers, I see losing this game 42-24 just because of the power in which that these two main threats possess. Also on the defensive side, you can't overlook like TJ Slayton, right? He's going up against his former team in the Packers. Demetrius Knight was that guy they took out of South Carolina on that great South Carolina Gamecocks defense a year ago that featured Nick Amenwari on that defense. They were really good. There was Kyle Kennard. Like, that was a TJ Sanders. Like, that defense had a whole bunch of talents on it. That defense is going to be good the next year, even without those four talented guys. But where's Gesicki going to be in the scheme of things? He'd been great with Miami. That's the tight end that makes a difference in this type of matchup where maybe Chase and Higgins struggle to get something over the top where they have a massive impact, but Gesicki is that third very good receiving target. A 4-2 Cincinnati Bengals at that point for a Thursday night game against the Aaron Rodgers led. Of course, you can see the Bear stuff in the background. We know we want the, I mean, it's AFC. It doesn't really matter for the divisional standings, but go Cincinnati. Beat Aaron Rodgers. Please do it. The Steelers, I like the Steelers to win this game, though, 24-20, running the football, keeping time of possession, leaning on Caleb Johnson, in bending, not breaking on the defensive side, and limiting that Bengals offense to a couple of kicks that wind up being the difference. But Joe Burrow versus Aaron Rodgers, do they both end up being Hall of Famer? It remains to be seen. You know, Burrow has a little bit of catching up to do. Rodgers with 4 MVPs. The 4-3 Bengals against the Jets at home. Now, why I like the Jets to put up some points is Justin Fields. The Bengals don't have a guy. I've talked about this in all my videos and previews for next year. Logan Wilson, of course, a great athlete, but I need to see one or two players athletically. Like Shamar Stewart can be that guy, but who are players that can hold these freak athletes, these Lamar Jacksons, to limit their game? Josh Allen, the Kyler Murray, like when they're going up against Jaden Daniels, these running threat quarterbacks like Justin Fields is, how can they be limited? And I just don't see it. I see Justin having a very big day running the football, but the Bengals ultimately with a win. Ja'Marr Chase versus Sauce Gardner. What more else do you need to hear about? So the 5-3 Bengals at home against the Chicago Bears. This is a fun one because the day before that, me as a Bears fan and a Buckeye fan, I am like Penn State, Ohio State. The Saturday, November 1st, and then the next day, the Bears are at the Bengals? Like, I got it. I'm still considering. Haven't booked my ticket yet, and I probably won't have even when I'm back from my trip to Africa. But it's funny how I'll go to Africa, and I won't pull the trigger on getting to see the Buckeyes, Penn State in a top 5 matchup, and then you see Bears-Bengals. But I have the Bengals beating the Bears, moving to 6-3 on the season, and firmly establishing themselves as a good team. Chicago looks to be improved in all phases because of the offensive line play and more weapons on the outside with Loveland and Burden now. You can see that Caleb will just be better. And with an offensive-minded head coach, O-line, playmakers, better play calling, and then better defense, those are 4 factors that can contribute to Caleb just being better just without him even throwing a pass. Like, just the fact that he's got better talent to support him, but do have the Bengals coming up with the win. It's just going to be tough. Like Tyreek Stevenson trying to hold up, Byard Briskert in the back end. You can see the impartialness. Bengals beating the Bears last time they faced off. Roquan Smith had a pick 6 in that game, and Cincinnati was down 17 but had a late sort of comeback. Then the bye week hits before they are at Aaron Rodgers at Heinz Field in the Steelers, and they move to 7-3 on the season. You can see the schedule, and it's not crazy to imagine a lot of what I'm talking about, even if they wind up in shootouts like last year. Just need the ball to bounce their way a little bit here and there, but it's not crazy to see them being 7-3 next year, post the bye, a win at Pittsburgh, and this is the one where it's like, wow, they have DK Metcalf on offense and Freiermuth, but where's someone else? Like, be able to sustain drives. See that Pittsburgh will be a good team. I had them winning 9 games in the 2025 season, but failing to beat teams like the Bengals or the Ravens in the upper echelon of the conference. In the next game, this is going to be week 12. The 7-3 Bengals taking on the Patriots, another team I've actually got 9-8. I'm very high on Mike Vrabel led. I've got 80 points total, 38-42. Drake May and Joe Burrow squaring off. Holy moly! A lot of this will be production from Travion Henderson in the backfield. Of course, the second round pick out of Ohio State. It's going to be tough for those Bengal fans seeing Travion do it, because of course a lot of them are probably Buckeye fans as well, like myself. So 7-4 Cincinnati team coming out of that matchup before Thanksgiving at the Baltimore Ravens. Now you got to get your grub in early, of course. You've got Packers, Lions, and then Cowboys, Chiefs. One of the better slates that we've seen on Thanksgiving, because last year, like, Bears Lions wasn't really all that of an exciting game. Like, this is a divisional matchup. Of course, Packers Lions is, but you just know the Ravens and Bengals are going to have records going into that. Like 7-4 for the Bengals going into that game against Baltimore. They'd be, if they're 7-4, they're legitimately right there with Baltimore in the thick of the race for the division, as well as, of course, a wild card. I have Baltimore holding on 31-22, winning that matchup later on. It's just that ability. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, of course, running the ball. I mentioned a little bit of my concern with Justin Fields. I didn't talk about Breece Hall at all, but that is like teams that can run the ball, keep time of possession. The Bengals being a team, like their time of possession could be a lot less because of the incomplete pass elements and being more attuned to the passing game, with Burrow having success throwing to the outside as far as the run game chewing up clock. Like that could be a 40-20 time of possession where the Ravens just kind of outwear him. 7-5. Again, this might be the toughest stretch of 3 games in the whole season. It's at Ravens, at Bills, then the Ravens again. From 7-3, I've got them losing again. This would drop them to 7-6 on the season, a loss to the Bills. Now, why this is going to be a big factor is, of course, they dropped 7-6, and it might even be at the time out of the playoff picture, like top 7 might put them to 8 or 9. But also, it's Josh Allen, of course. It's Orchard Park. It's a team, like, usually the measuring stick now is how do you perform against the Chiefs or the Bills. I would say these have been the best 2 teams in the conference, like the last 6 years, of course, because Baltimore got there. They've been there once, got beat by the Chiefs. Bengals have been there twice, got beat by them, but it's the matter of getting back. It's like the Bengals have struggled to get to the playoffs. They've missed it 3 years with Joe Burrow as the quarterback. A loss to Buffalo. Why? Maxwell Harrison being able to run with anybody in football. He could run. He probably could run out there and do pretty well in any matchup. It's just the matter of guys that are a bit more route savvy. So 7-6 they drop before a home game against the Ravens, and this is just as big of a matchup gets. And I got them winning 27-21. They pull it out. Those 2 games were heartbreakers against Baltimore last year. They're thinking the same thing. Thanksgiving, away from our family, a loss. But 8-6 on the season. They get the win against Baltimore. It's absolutely huge, which is even more important because of the race within, of course, the wild card we talked about. But even for yourself, you're using a measuring stick as the progress of our season. How do we square off against a divisional opponent? Maybe not as much as a Jacksonville, a Titans team beating up on a Baltimore or a Buffalo. It helps as far as the confidence. But a letdown the next week I see against the Miami Dolphins, losing 31-32 on Sunday Night Football. This could get flexed as my opinion of Miami as a lesser team. Miami's pretty much one phase. They can play pretty good defense, but are going to struggle to win tight games, except for this one. Bengals are 8-7, needing to win the next 2. They're at home for the Cardinals and the Browns, and I've got them winning the next 2, getting into the postseason with a 10-7 record, beating the Cardinals 39-31. Is Will Johnson at that point? Of course, that name rings a bell for the Bengals / Ohio State fans. There is fun video for me to make this. Obviously, the Bears and the Buckeyes are my teams I follow. But 39-31, beating the Cardinals. Will Johnson versus Higgins, and Ja'Marr Chase, a fun matchup. Really would love to see Will Johnson have a great NFL career and the knees just not be a factor in limiting him, because he is truly one of the more talented corners we have seen, oh gosh, in the last decade, really, coming out of college. And then week 18, Cleveland divisional matchup against them. It stays a little closer than it should, but a win 20-17 moves the Bengals to a wild card spot, either 6 or 7, or they're set up to be a dangerous opponent in the playoffs, but in my opinion, not a threat to get to the Super Bowl, being at this stage, like, you got, I think that first round bye is so important, so you're only playing 2 instead of 3 games. It's not like it had been forever, for 20 years, where the first round bye goes to the top 2 seeds, and then usually it's like 2 playing 1, or you get an upset and 3 ends up playing 1, or 3 versus 2. The Bengals, let me know, please, in the comments what you think of what their season will be next year. Make sure to subscribe for more content coming out in the future. If you're a Bengal fan like the Buckeyes, I talk about them quite a bit. I try to stay as impartial as possible and just provide you my analysis and get better at what I'm doing. So please provide me feedback. Let me know how I can improve, what sort of content you want to see in the future from the brand Blitz with Blender, so that you can keep coming back and be entertained, because that's all we want to do. So thank you so much, and I will see you next time.
Best player in college football.
That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic.
Josh Blender. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Blender.
To the 40, 35, 30, Espinosa to the 20.